Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're here today. Look, if you're an undergrad who's just stepping into the wild, fascinating world of research, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're tackling something that is just an absolute must-know for your academic journey: qualitative sampling. More specifically, we're going to answer the one exact question that keeps student researchers up at night: how many participants are actually enough? Grasping how to size your sample is absolutely crucial for the success of your research. But don't worry, by the end of this explainer, you're going to have a rock-solid understanding of exactly how to do it. Let's get into it.
So ask yourself right now, how many participants do I actually need to interview? If you've ever felt that sudden wave of panic trying to figure out the quote-unquote right number for your project, take a deep breath. Seriously, you are so not alone. It is incredibly common to stress over this, especially when you're just starting out. So frame this explainer in your mind as the ultimate solution to that exact dilemma. We are going to clear up all that confusion so you can approach your research with total, absolute confidence.
Okay, first things first, let's dive into a major distinction comparing quantitative and qualitative approaches. It's like apples and oranges. Often, when we think of research, we immediately think of quantitative studies, right? The ones that rely on strict statistical formulas and math, because their whole goal is to generalize findings to a massive population. But qualitative research? Totally different beast. Qualitative sampling literally does not care about statistical formulas. Instead, it is entirely focused on purposive sampling to achieve incredible depth and richness. We want to deeply understand meanings, lived experiences, and really complex social processes. So remember, it's not about how many people you survey, it's about how deeply you understand the few people you actually interview. To help us get to that deeper understanding, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with number 1, what is qualitative sampling? 2, the 6 research designs. 3, the golden rule, known as saturation. 4, writing your methodology. And finally, 5, a quick recap and key takeaways. Feel free to structure your notes right around these 5 steps. All right, moving into section 1. What actually is qualitative sampling? Let's build our foundation on how qualitative researchers actually go about selecting their subjects. So the most crucial point here is defining what a population even means in this specific context. In qualitative research, a population is a very specific group of individuals, settings, or even documents that possess characteristics strictly relevant to the phenomenon you're investigating. Now, why do you think this concept is so important? Well, it's because qualitative research is never, and I mean never, about randomly selecting people from a crowd. It's about intentionally targeting specific experiences. You are looking for the exact individuals who hold the rich, detailed information you need to answer your specific research question. To actually find those specific people, researchers use a really intentional toolkit. We don't just, pull names from a hat. We use intentional methods. There's purposive sampling, where we literally handpick participants based on our judgment. There's also criterion sampling, snowball sampling, which is where one participant refers another, theoretical sampling, and maximum variation sampling. We're not going to dive deep into all of these today, but just know that these are the intentional, strategic tools you'll use to find those information-rich participants. So, your big key takeaway for section 1. Qualitative sampling is always about intentional depth, never random selection. Okay, section 2, the 6 research designs. Let's explore your options and tackle that core question of sample sizes head on. So there are 6 major qualitative research designs you'll typically run into: phenomenology, case study, ethnography, grounded theory, narrative inquiry, and generic studies. And if you take a look, you'll notice how wildly the typical sample sizes range here. We are talking anywhere from just a single case study all the way up to 50 participants for an ethnography. The huge takeaway here? There is absolutely no universal magic number for qualitative sample size. It depends entirely on the design you choose. Let's break a few of these down, starting with phenomenology. Think of phenomenology simply as the study of lived experiences. The entire goal here is to deeply understand what it's actually like for individuals who have personally lived through a specific shared phenomenon. Because you're going so incredibly deep into personal feelings and perspectives, the common practice for a sample size here is right around 5 to 15 participants.
Let's apply this with a really concrete example. Imagine you're doing a study exploring how police officers handle the emotional toll of investigating child abuse. A phenomenological study might involve interviewing, say, 10 police investigators who have specifically managed those types of cases. You don't need 1,000 cops for this. You just need 10 who can vividly and deeply describe that exact lived experience.
Next up, we have the case study.
Now, a case study is an in-depth examination of what we call a bounded system. This could be a single organization, a specific program, a community, or maybe a really unique event. Because it's bounded, meaning it has very distinct, defined limits, the common practice is to look at just 1 to 10 cases. And keep in mind, a single case might actually involve interviewing multiple people, but they are all within that one specific boundary.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between a case study and our next design, ethnography. A single case study might focus intensely on exactly one police station. That's your bounded physical system. Ethnography, however, is about understanding a whole culture. So an ethnography might involve 20 to 50 participants observing the entire organizational culture of police work across a bunch of different settings, usually over a period of many months. Studying a bounded place is very different from immersing yourself to study a broad culture. The key takeaway here? Your required sample size will always be dictated by the specific boundaries of your chosen design.
Moving on to Section 3, the Golden Rule. This is data saturation, and it is the ultimate rule that dictates exactly when you can stop conducting interviews.
So, data saturation is the point where further data collection no longer contributes any new themes, insights, or information relevant to your research question. I absolutely love using the analogy of squeezing a sponge here. When you first squeeze a wet sponge, water just pours out, right? Those are all your exciting new themes from your first few interviews. But as you keep squeezing, less and less water comes out. Eventually, no matter how hard you squeeze that sponge, no new water appears. That is saturation. You've squeezed all the unique information out of your participant pool, and doing more interviews just won't give you any new insights. Now, saturation isn't just a gut feeling, it's an actual, measurable, chronological process. Step 1. Your interviews start to feel kind of repetitive. You're hearing the same stories over and over. Step 2. As you analyze the text, no new codes are emerging. Step 3. Your broader categories are fully fleshed out and developed. And finally, Step 4. Any new participant you interview is merely confirming what you already know. When you hit Step 4, my friends, you have reached saturation and you can finally stop collecting data.
It's also worth noting that saturation actually happens on a few different levels. First, there's code saturation, where no new basic categories emerge. Then, meaning saturation, where no deeper insights or nuances are found. And for studies like grounded theory, there's theoretical saturation, where no new relationships emerge to further develop your theory. To quickly recap Section 3, when the new information stops flowing, your data collection stops too.
Section 4. Let's talk about writing your methodology section. This is the application phase. How do we actually translate all these concepts into your own academic writing?
Here is a highly practical template you can literally model for a phenomenology study. Notice how explicitly clear it is. It names the sampling type right out of the gate, purpose of sampling. It states the exact participant count, 10 police investigators, and crucially, it explicitly states that golden rule we just learned. Data collection continued until data saturation was achieved, wherein no new themes emerged. This is exactly how your professors want to see you write it.
And here's a similar template for a case study. Again, see how it specifically mentions one police station as the bounded case? It also highlights that multiple data sources were utilized until sufficient information was obtained. It's precise, it uses the correct terminology, and it justifies the sample size based on the depth of information gathered, rather than just throwing out an arbitrary number. So, for Section 4, your key takeaway is to explicitly state your method, your participant count, and your saturation point directly in your writing.
All right, Section 5. Recap and takeaways. Let's consolidate everything you've learned today into some final thoughts. As a rapid-fire review, let's take one last look at those typical saturation numbers. Narrative inquiry is deeply, deeply personal, so saturation often hits around just 3 to 5 participants. Phenomenology is usually 6 to 12. Generic, qualitative studies sit right around 10 to 20, and grounded theory, well, because you're literally building a complex theory from scratch, that typically requires 20 to 30 participants to hit full saturation.
And this leads us to the ultimate key takeaway of this entire explainer. When you are designing your study, remember the 2 distinct mindsets. Quantitative asks, how many are statistically required? But qualitative research, the world you are stepping into right now, asks, how many participants are necessary to fully understand the phenomenon and achieve data saturation? Adequacy here isn't about mathematical formulas, it's about the richness, the depth, and the completeness of the data you squeeze from that sponge.
I want to leave you with this final provocative question to reflect on. In your very next research project, how will you prioritize the depth of your participant story over the sheer number of people you interview? Remember, as a qualitative researcher, your superpower is uncovering profound human truths, not just tallying up a head count. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep this structure in mind, trust the process of saturation, and you're going to do incredible, incredible research. See you next time.